Consequences to controlled media. And Entd's founders know them firsthand.
President Trump hosting the president of Turkey at the White House. We zoom in on their discussions from trade to fighter jet purchases to the war in Ukraine. Officials say preliminary evidence suggests a suspected shooter in Dallas was targeting ICE. One detainee is dead while two others remain in critical condition. The Senate is at a deadlock days ahead of a government shutdown deadline. Why Democrats and Republicans can't see eye to eye on federal funding and what each side is demanding. U.S. economy growth has been revised up as the U.S. has implemented its trade deal with the EU. An expert joins us ahead to look at the impacts. The U.S. reports intercepting 4 Russian military planes off Alaska today. How Washington is responding. A French court has sentenced former President Nicolas Sarkozy to prison. The verdict tied to claims of Libyan money in his campaign.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump, in his meeting with Turkish President Erdogan, talks about possible charges for former FBI Director James Comey.
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General and Todd Blanche and Lindsay Halligan, who's very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. He did terrible things at the FBI, and but I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
The Justice Department could soon announce an indictment against Comey. Media reports say one indictment could include allegations of lying to Congress in 2020. This came up from the Trump administration's investigation into the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane. That operation tried to discredit Trump's 2016 campaign by falsely tying him to Russia. Some updates on the shooting yesterday at the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Dallas. A shooter with a rifle opened fire from a nearby roof, killing one detainee and wounding another before taking his own life. Officials have confirmed the suspect as 29-year-old Joshua Yan. FBI Director Kash Patel gave more details this morning. In an X post, Patel said the agency is able to confirm that Yan downloaded a document containing a list of DHS facilities. He said the suspect conducted multiple searches of ballistics and the Charlie Kirk shot video between September 23rd and 24th. In August, he searched apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents. Patel added that further accumulated evidence indicates a high degree of pre-attack planning. Here's DHS Secretary Kristi Noem at an interview with Fox News last night.
Well, we can tell you that he was on an elevated rooftop, that he shot into a building, into a carport area, that he was targeting ICE based on what we've seen as far as evidence so far in this case. We see this kind of violence out on our streets every day. We see people that have been targeting our law enforcement officers across the country, not just in their rhetoric, but also in their actions out on the streets.
This archived mugshot of him dates back to 2016. It reportedly stemmed from an offense he committed a year earlier. Still images show bullet holes inside the ICE office in Dallas after the shooting. Yan's older brother, Noah, also told media outlets that he didn't know his brother's motive. President Trump has weighed in after the deadly shooting, calling for an end to, quote, rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement. He also commented on the shooting while taking a question during his meeting with Turkey's president.
The radical left is causing this problem, not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it, and they better not get them energized because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. Radical left Democrats are causing this problem, and it gets worse. It gets worse, and it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore, and that will not be good for the radical left, and we don't want that.
Antifa back in the spotlight. President Trump yesterday announced that he would be signing a new executive order to dismantle the group's networks in the U.S. Trump earlier this week signed an order declaring the left-wing group a domestic terrorist organization. Antifa acts through decentralized cells. Members have been spotted engaging in violence during protests, especially those related to Black Lives Matter or opposing Trump. They generally subscribe to extreme political views that are communist or anarchist. President Trump is hosting the president of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, at the White House. They're set to discuss trade and military agreements in a meeting.
He's built a tremendous military, powerful military, uses a lot of our equipment, and it's an honor to have him at the White House. We're going to have a lunch together. We're going to have a discussion, big discussion. We do a lot of trade with Turkey, and we're going to continue. We're going to do some additional trade. They want to buy F-16s, F-35s, and some other things, and we're going to talk to them about that.
Trump says he has a great relationship with Erdogan, especially on military and trade. The war in Ukraine and potential tariffs on Russia are also on the table. Turkey is a NATO ally, but also keeps a close relationship with Russia. Trump says he'd like to have Turkey stop buying oil and gas from Russia.
7,818 people were killed last week, mostly military people, their people, and Ukrainians. More Russians, actually, than Ukraine, a little bit more. But it's such a waste of human life, and so he ought to stop. Putin ought to stop. And with that, we'll get to a little bit of a discussion. We're going to make some great trade deals for both countries. We do a lot of business with Turkey. They build great products.
Trump said he's disappointed in Russian President Vladimir Putin for not stopping the war, and also disappointed in NATO allies that continue to buy Russian oil. But he noted that NATO members agreed to increase defense spending, and the alliance is stronger than ever. The president also highlighted that Erdogan could have a big influence in stopping the war, and the best he could do is to stop buying Russian oil. On the Israel-Hamas war, the president said he had good meetings with the leaders of Middle Eastern countries, and a deal could be close. The U.S. reports intercepting 4 Russian military planes off Alaska today is the latest reported threat to NATO airspace by Moscow. The U.S. says it responded by mobilizing 9 aircraft of different kinds. The Russian planes reportedly remained in international airspace and did not enter U.S. or Canadian territory. But they entered the Alaskan Air Defense Identification Zone. That's an area of international airspace that requires the ready identification of all aircraft for national security purposes. President Trump met with Turkish President Erdogan today. Joining us now to discuss is Emel Akan, senior White House correspondent for the Epoch Times, and we have Gerard Filitti, Middle East Affairs analyst and attorney specializing in international law. Good afternoon to you both. First of all, Emel, I'll start with you today. What can you tell us about this meeting?
Thank you, Don, for having me. Today, as you said, President Trump welcomed Turkey's President Erdogan. He's hosting him at the White House, and they will be having lunch as well. And this is a crucial meeting for both leaders. And I think it's important for Erdogan to have this meeting because there's a sanction going on Turkey's military industrial complex. So they have to resolve that, and that is because of the purchase of in 2019, the purchase of Russian air defense system. And Trump said during the meeting, before their bilateral meeting today, said that he is open to discussing that, and he's open to lifting that sanction. But he has some requests from Erdogan as well. So that's an interesting meeting for Trump, and we will have to see at the end of the meeting. They will discuss, they will release and inform us about what they have agreed on.
So, Gerard, can we go into a bit more of the specifics of this meeting? For example, how significant, in your opinion, is Turkey's potential purchase of Boeing aircraft?
It's a very significant motivator for Turkey to change some of its behavior. Even though Turkey is a NATO ally, it's a member of NATO and has been a long-time U.S. ally, it is not always aligned on U.S. foreign policy. It does significant trade with Russia. Its businesses buying gas from Russia. About 45% of Turkey's domestic gas comes from Russia. This is one way that Russia is able to evade sanctions and pay for its war in Ukraine by its trade dealings with Turkey. So by dangling that prospect of the U.S. restarting negotiations to sell advanced weaponry to Turkey, like F-35 stealth fighters, for example, that is the carrot on the table for Turkey to back away from some of its dealings with Russia and to help that align more with the U.S. policy interests in the region.
So, Emel, you've been following this meeting closely. Is there any one point that actually stood out to you the most?
Yeah, I think the tone of the meeting was interesting. And at some point, Trump said that Erdogan is a very opinionated leader, and he said that he doesn't like opinionated people, but he likes Erdogan. So the tone of the meeting was positive, and he's willing to show some help. He's willing to help the Turkish leader about sanctions. And of course, this Boeing deal is very important. Right before the meeting, we learned from the Turkish Airlines chairman that they are in the process of purchasing 250 aircraft from Boeing, and that is a significant deal for Trump. So overall, everything was positive during the meeting, and Trump also acknowledged the past experience with Erdogan about the 2018 incident where Pastor Branson was held in detention center in Turkey, and he acknowledged the crisis. Trump acknowledged the crisis back then and his harsh words towards Erdogan, but he acknowledged that since then the relationship has improved. So that was a remarkable meeting when you look at the history of the relationship between both leaders.
So, Gerard, can we get your view on how you would describe the current relationship between the U.S. and Turkey under the Trump administration? Perhaps you can compare that with previous administrations.
Well, I think with Trump, it's more unpredictable than it has been with other administrations. And one of the factors here has been Trump's support with Netanyahu in Israel. There's been a growing distance between Turkey and Israel as well. So I think Trump's approach towards Turkey has been conciliatory in many ways, looking to redevelop trade deals and develop and strengthen a trade relationship, as with Boeing, as with military technology, as with developing these allyships against Russia and against other factors like China that is actively working in the region to undermine U.S. interests. However, with Trump, it's also catch as catch can because he does have conflicting issues when it comes to what his policies are. So, for example, when he prioritizes Israel and Israel's needs, security needs, sometimes that comes at the expense of the relationship with Turkey. When he prioritizes his relationship with Turkey, on the other hand, that is beneficial to other interests in the area, including Qatar. So Trump is taking a very nuanced look here. I think that he is being very carefully optimistic about long-term relationships, especially economic and military ties with Turkey, and is returning to more traditional diplomacy where Turkey is an ally, but we understand that it doesn't always do things in the American interest.
So, Emel, can you comment on what Gerard said, and can you talk about what does Trump want from Erdogan and vice versa?
Yeah, so during this meeting, Trump will ask, and during the meeting, actually, before the bilateral meeting, Trump said that he was looking forward to working with Erdogan on key regional issues. He said during the meeting that Erdogan remains neutral in Ukraine-Russia war, and he basically highlighted that, and he said that he seeks his help. On Gaza issue as well, as mentioned, Trump has a tremendous influence in the region and over Arab leaders, other Muslim leaders. So he wants to see Erdogan on his side when trying to resolve this Gaza conflict. And he also highlighted the fact that as a NATO ally, Turkey is the third largest purchaser of Russian oil and gas. So he wants to see that end, and he highlighted that as well. So I think we saw that Trump, during the UN General Assembly, said that these NATO allies are actually fueling the war, supporting the war by purchasing Russian oil, and Turkey is one of the major countries doing that. So I think they will discuss that and probably will come to a conclusion during this meeting about that.
So, Gerard, what are the prospects that Trump will get what he wants from Turkey?
Well, there are good prospects that he will get some of what he wants from Turkey. I think Turkey itself has been moving to diversify its gas imports, relying more on liquefied natural gas from the U.S., from Algeria, on pipeline from Qatar. So there is a likelihood that Turkey will become less of a consumer of Russian oil and gas. However, in the grander scheme, it's in Turkey's interests to be more non-aligned. Even though it is a member of NATO, I don't think it will join the diplomatic fray against Russia with respect to Ukraine. And I think it will maintain its position with respect to Gaza and Palestine and not be the friendliest state towards Israel. So I think Trump will get some of what he wants, but he's not going to get everything.
Okay, Mel, anything you'd like to add there?
Also, during this meeting, F-16s and F-35s are crucial matters for Erdogan, and he will be seeking Trump's help. Now, this is the first time he is at the White House after 6 years. During the Biden administration, he wasn't invited, and the Biden administration was not very friendly with Erdogan, and publicly his Secretary of State, Blinken, criticized Erdogan for being authoritarian. And so this is the first time where Trump is seeing, Erdogan is seeing some relationship here with the administration, and he also wants to seek the Halkbank case resolved. This is a Turkish state bank that is under scrutiny, and this case has been going on for years. It has been sanctioned because of the evasion of Iran sanctions. So there is some things that Erdogan will be looking forward to resolve during this meeting, and he wants Turkey to be part of the F-35 program again, and he's looking forward to resolving that matter. And we don't know what will happen with the Russian air defense system that they bought recently. Nobody knows where the system is at the moment, and it's not been installed yet. So there's still flexibility to solve the problem. So that's what he's going to discuss with and resolve with this administration during this visit.
Okay, so I just have one more question here. Gerard, what is the dynamics right now between Turkey and Russia?
Well, throughout its history, Turkey has played both sides of the street, so to speak. It has maintained cordial relationships with Russia, sometimes being closer to Russia than the West, sometimes the other way around. Turkey doesn't want to be aligned directly with one camp or another. It maintains military exercises with Russia, for example, in regional security, even though it is a NATO member. So for Turkey's connection with Russia, Russia has good products that Turkey wants to use in its military, the S-400 missile system, surface air missile being one example. But at the other side, it does see the benefits of being in NATO and having access to American technology, which is far superior. So for Turkey, it's about Turkey first. And this is language that President Trump certainly understands.
Okay, Gerard and Mel, really appreciate having both of you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Senate is at a deadlock days ahead of a government shutdown deadline. Why Democrats and Republicans can't see eye to eye on federal funding and what each side is demanding. Stay tuned for that and more after the break.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our biggest 3-in-1 sale ever with a limited edition product, a back-in-stock special, and a closeout deal you won't find anywhere else. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get our MyPillow bed sheets only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings. Regular $119.98, only $29.88. Once they're gone for good. How about our My Towels? They're finally back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And for the first time and the only time ever, get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get the best offers ever. Quantities are extremely limited, so order now.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. But every time you drive after drinking, the music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed.
The clock is ticking toward a potential government shutdown. With the deadline just days away, lawmakers in Washington remain deeply divided. Here's how things stand right now.
With just days before the government funding deadline, Congress remains at a standstill, raising the risk of a shutdown at the end of the month. Republicans, with President Trump's backing, are pushing for what's called a clean continuing resolution, a short-term bill to extend current funding levels without new spending measures. House Republicans passed such a bill last week, extending funding through November 21st.
The 60-vote threshold having not been achieved.
But the Senate rejected it, along with an alternative from Democrats. Senate Republicans will need some Democratic support, but Democrats say they won't back a funding bill unless Republicans reverse nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid cuts tied to last year's tax and spending package. Republicans say the Medicaid cut targets waste, fraud, and abuse. Democrats say millions will lose coverage. Democrats also want to extend Obamacare subsidies for low- and middle-income Americans. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries warned Democrats won't back a funding deal unless health care protections are ironclad and in legislation. Jeffries says if a shutdown happens, Republicans will be to blame.
If the government shuts down, it will shut down because Donald Trump and Republicans in the House and the Senate have made that decision.
And the White House is increasing pressure, telling federal agencies to prepare for large-scale firings if a shutdown occurs. In a memo Wednesday night, the Office of Management and Budget said agencies should consider cutting the workforce for programs whose funding would lapse and are not, quote, consistent with the president's priorities. Senate Republicans say Democrats are holding government funding hostage to push for nearly $1 trillion in new spending. Senate Majority Leader John Thune told CNN on Wednesday that Republicans have a bill ready to be passed, but Democrats are hijacking the process.
So this is a short-term extension of existing funding, current funding. The Democrats are trying to hijack it to get $1 trillion in new spending. And I don't think that's a very good deal for the American taxpayer.
For now, both sides remain entrenched. The Senate is not scheduled to return until September 29th, just one day before the deadline.
A new poll says Democrats and Republicans are tied in the New Jersey governor's race. A new poll by Emerson College Pix 11 The Hill shows Democrat Mickey Sherrill and Republican Jet Chittarelli each getting 43% of the vote, while another 11% are undecided. The poll released today comes after the first debate. The pollster noted that the Democrat is doing better among women and younger voters, while the Republican is doing better among men and older voters. Republicans are hoping to flip the governor's seat in the Garden State. President Trump reacted to the poll saying in a Truth Social post, quote, "Jack is tough on crime and cutting taxes. Two things that people really demand today. He will be a great governor. We need Jack in New Jersey." Disney is facing legal threats from a group of shareholders over its suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, following his comments on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Lawyers representing labor and press groups, including Reporters Without Borders and the American Federation of Teachers, say Disney has 5 days to release internal documents or face a lawsuit. They argue the decision may have violated shareholder interests and free speech principles, especially with 25% of ABC affiliates still refusing to air Kimmel's show. The move triggered a $4 billion drop in Disney's market value last week. Disney has not publicly responded to the demands. Kimmel's Tuesday's return drew over 6 million viewers in a 10-year ratings high, compared to his usually average of around 1.5 million viewers nightly. President Trump is now teasing a lawsuit against ABC following Jimmy Kimmel's return. Trump says he's going to, quote, test ABC out, saying that Kimmel's show could potentially count as a major illegal campaign contribution, as the president calls it a, quote, arm of the Democratic National Committee. In Kimmel's return monologue Tuesday night, Kimmel says that he never intended to make light of Charlie Kirk's killing, but Vice President J.D. Vance says in his response this, listen.
He didn't actually say sorry to Charlie Kirk or his family. And the reason that so many people, including me, were so upset with what Jimmy Kimmel said is that he accused Charlie Kirk's murderer of being a MAGA or a right-wing American. It wasn't a joke. It was straight-up disinformation. And I really wish Jimmy Kimmel would apologize for it.
President Trump has already secured $16 million from ABC back in December 2024 as part of the settlement of a defamation lawsuit that the president brought against the network. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Turning Point USA wrote on X yesterday that Jimmy Kimmel's comments on his show were not sufficient and lacked an apology to Kirk's family. This is after ABC suspended Kimmel's show before reinstating it on Tuesday. President Trump has since criticized ABC on Truth Social for allowing the show back on air. Turning Point USA is on its nationwide campus tour once again after the assassination of its founder, Charlie Kirk. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin honored Kirk's legacy yesterday during a stop at Virginia Tech. He told thousands of students they will carry forward the movement that Kirk built there. Here's the look.
But see, the truth is that the question that has been asked over and over again is, who will be the next Charlie? And as I look out in this room and I see thousands of you, I want to repeat the best answer that I have heard. You will be the next Charlie. All of you. And that is something to take home tonight.
Youngkin said Kirk left behind a blueprint to advance truth in the face of evil. Youngkin also recalled Kirk's faith, telling students they're lights that chase out darkness. And he praised Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, who has taken up the role of Turning Point CEO. He called her an extraordinary leader with the courage of a lion and the heart of a saint. A closer look at the U.S. economy as growth is revised up and the U.S. enacts trade terms with the EU. Stay tuned for that.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day. Becoming a better version of myself. To be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just growing. He's becoming his own person. Man, at first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. He really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.
Hi, I'm Ryan Blaney, a third-generation race car driver, and we dedicate a lot of our time to going as fast as possible. My grandpa Lou is the reason why my dad and I started racing, and I'm really proud to follow in his tracks. But when my grandpa was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was a very unexpected bump in the road for us. I've learned a lot on this journey with my grandpa Lou, and the memories of my grandpa will always be with me. And in our family, we're used to getting involved, and I encourage you to do the same, especially when it comes to caring for your loved ones. When I think about Alzheimer's and the impact it had on my family, I recognize that losing a race isn't such a bad day after all. It's important to notice if older family members are acting differently, experiencing problems with their memory, or having trouble with routine tasks. Talking about Alzheimer's can be really tough, but if you notice something, have a conversation with your loved one. Encourage them to see a doctor or offer to go with them. Early detection of Alzheimer's can give your family time to explore support services, make a plan for the future, and access available treatments. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
There is a road laid out for me.
Boxes everywhere. And this is gonna be Addie's room.
I think
you're really gonna like it.
I hope so. Yeah. I know this road is there for me. There is a long way.
First night here, but Amy seems cool.
The way it's down by the river. I am blind, but I need not see.
I got this.
I know this road is there for me.
Okay.
If I'm really free, take me down to the river and wash me.
A tentative deal to keep TikTok operational has been finally reached. President Trump will sign an executive order today approving a new TikTok U.S. joint venture. NTD's Daniel Monahan has key takeaways from the agreement.
The executive order will grant China-based ByteDance a 120-day extension to divest its ownership in TikTok. This gives ByteDance and U.S. investors time to secure regulatory approvals and finalize the agreement. The new joint venture will be governed by a 7-member board. 6 of those seats will be filled by Americans with backgrounds in cybersecurity and national security.
TikTok will be owned by a majority of American investors and controlled by a board of directors with extensive national security and cybersecurity credentials.
The 7th board seat will be held by ByteDance, which will be excluded from security-related decisions. ByteDance will retain less than a 20% stake in the new venture. TikTok has around 170 million monthly users, and the White House estimates the app could contribute nearly $180 billion to U.S. economic growth over the next 4 years. Oracle, already a key data host for TikTok in the U.S., will serve as the venture's trusted technology partner, overseeing the app's source code and all security matters. The White House says Oracle will receive a copy of TikTok's algorithm, retrain it on U.S. data, and monitor it for any signs of foreign interference. ByteDance will no longer control code operations or send U.S. data to China.
All U.S. user data will be stored on servers operated by Oracle in the United States, protected from surveillance or interference by foreign adversaries.
The White House called it great news for the millions of American youth who use TikTok, whose data it says will be safe and secure with the new deal.
But it's also great news for all of the small business owners who have really been able to make a living off of the use of TikTok as well.
In an interview aired Sunday, President Trump confirmed that the American investors will include Lachlan Murdoch, Larry Ellison, and Michael Dell, with Rupert Murdoch also potentially involved. Lachlan Murdoch recently solidified control of his family's media empire, which includes Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Larry Ellison co-founded Oracle, while Michael Dell leads Dell Technologies.
Really great people, very prominent people. And they're also American patriots, you know, they love this country, so I think they're going to do a really good job.
The deal follows 2 years of negotiations between the U.S. government and ByteDance aimed at resolving national security concerns. There were ongoing fears about the Chinese Communist Party's influence on TikTok's algorithm and access to user data, especially since China's cybersecurity laws require companies to comply with secret government data requests. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
The Trump administration confirmed a trade deal with the European Union, lowering auto tariffs to 15% and exempting aircraft, drugs, and raw materials. Here are the details.
President Donald Trump's administration said on Wednesday it was formally implementing the U.S. trade agreement with the European Union. The notice said the tariff schedule had been amended to implement the framework agreement reached with the EU in July. That lowers the president's tariffs to 15% on most imports from the bloc, including autos. The deal was subsequently modified to make the duty rate retroactive to August 1st, but European automakers have been waiting for weeks for the formal U.S. notice. For EU cars and parts, the tariff rate dropped to 15% from 25%, effective August 1st. That is sure to ease anxiety in an industry that has been waiting for the long-delayed confirmation in order to make sourcing decisions. And shares in German automakers like BMW and Mercedes-Benz rose following the confirmation. The notice also specifies hundreds of products from the EU that are exempt from Trump's new tariffs. They include natural resources such as cork that are lacking in the United States, generic pharmaceuticals, and aircraft and aircraft parts.
An uptick in consumer spending helped the U.S. economy expand in the second quarter. Gross domestic product rose 3.8% from April through June, according to the Commerce Department's third and final estimate. That's a half point more than the rate given during the second report. Analysts say increased consumer spending and falling imports helped boost the economy over the past few months. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta predicts the GDP resumed its growth in the third quarter. And first-time claims for unemployment benefits dropped last week to their lowest level since July. Today's Department of Labor report said there were about 218,000 claims made last week. That's a drop of 14,000 from the week before. Jobless claims had jumped significantly higher earlier this month, but that increase was driven by Texas, which was showing a spike in unemployment claims later attributed to fraudulent activity. And joining us now to discuss the U.S. economy growing 3.8% is Michael Busler. He's a professor of finance at Stockton University and economist and public policy analyst. Michael, always great to see you. Thank you for coming on today. So I wanted to ask you, the Commerce Department reported gross domestic product rose 3.8%, right, from April through June, and that's significantly higher than its previous estimate. What does this say about the resilience of the U.S. economy?
So it's significantly higher, as you pointed out. The first quarter, we had negative growth in GDP. A lot of that had to do with a big increase in imports. When they measure GDP, they look at everything the consumers bought, business bought, the government bought. And if you take imports, they subtract imports out because those things that were bought that were not made in the U.S. That's what caused the number in the fourth quarter to be negative. Now, imports went way down in the second quarter. So the large segment of the consumer spending was on domestically produced goods. The job numbers, the initial jobless claims are 2 weeks in a row. The initial jobless claims have gone down, which is a very positive sign. As you know, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates 25 basis points. I think that was a little small. 50 basis points would have probably been better, but they cut it 25 basis points. That will tend to help stimulate the economy. The Atlanta Fed model that you mentioned, I think in the third quarter, is calling for growth in the 2.2% range. So the first quarter was very bad. The second quarter was extremely good. But if you average out the two of them, the economy was only growing at less than a 2% rate. So it's still relatively weak, but there are some signs that it's coming back. And with the Federal Reserve, I believe, committed to cutting interest rates 2 more times before the end of the year, that's a very positive sign for economic growth.
So do you see trouble in the labor market? The Federal Reserve also mentioned this in their last meeting. We got 2 reports, that were below expectations. I think it was somewhere around 22,000. This recent one, and then the one before was around 70,000.
Yeah. So recall, though, that the jobs numbers we've really gotten in the last 2.5 years have been inflated by nearly 2 million jobs. So the job market was not nearly as strong as we thought. The president replaced the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, saying, look, we need to get data that's more accurate. But the job market continues to be weak. The number of people unemployed for 6 months or longer is starting to grow. So I think more stimulus is needed from the Federal Reserve. And by cutting interest rates a couple of times before the end of the year, I think that's going to be a big help.
How confident do you feel about consumer spending power with this backdrop of the labor market? Because as you know, consumer spending is a big driver of GDP.
Absolutely. Consumer spending accounts for about 70% of GDP. Economists really for the last year or two have been saying that they're not quite sure why consumers are as confident as they are and they're spending as much as they are. There's a lot of negative economic data. The inflation problem we still haven't resolved yet, and that's eating at a lot of consumers. The only good thing is that energy prices have fallen somewhat, and there's some indication that energy prices will start to fall more in the coming months. Why do I say that? OPEC and the OPEC plus nations, which are all the countries essentially that produce oil, they've all agreed to increase production in the month of September. So when you increase the supply of anything, the price tends to fall. So we expect lower prices, and President Trump's policy of trying to increase domestic production, his quote, drill baby drill policy, will take some time. It just can't turn on a switch. But by early next year, we should start to see domestic energy production increase significantly. If that happens, energy accounts for about 7% of the consumer price index directly and a little more indirectly because it affects the cost business pays for energy to produce goods and services. So if energy prices fall the way the Trump administration hopes, that should bring the inflation way down, and that should allow the Federal Reserve to lower rates more. The federal funds rate, which they lowered down to about 4%, is still restrictive. Most economists would say if you're 3.25% range, that's neutral. Above that, it's restrictive. So it's still restrictive. And at a time when the economy is slowing, although the second quarter was very good, when the economy is slowing and the number of jobs added is not nearly as great as we thought it was, it's really time for the Federal Reserve to start bringing that interest rate down, and that will really spur consumption.
So are those your main concerns about the U.S. economy, or are there other concerns that you're looking at that might drag down the GDP? Or perhaps you're even entirely optimistic for the U.S. economy in the short term?
Yeah, so I'm very optimistic about the economy next year. I'm a little worried that the inflation rate is not as low as we like it. Why am I optimistic for next year? All of these trade deals, and you mentioned one of the trade deals with the European Union, all of these trade deals set tariffs for countries to bring their products into the U.S. However, all of them, virtually all of them, say that the U.S. can sell in those countries with a zero tariff. And that's much better than we've been facing really for the last 2 or 3 decades, when most countries charged very high tariffs and U.S. producers couldn't sell products there. So I expect next year a big spike in U.S. exports, and that will help grow the economy. In addition to that, there's a lot of foreign investment coming into the country. President Trump says he has commitments for $17 trillion worth of investments. When all that comes in, and it takes some time, but when all that comes in, and it'll start coming in next year, I think that will add to growth and improve the manufacturing sector, adding many more jobs.
So the EU-U.S. trade deal that you brought up there, the deal confirms a 15% tariff on automobiles and parts from the bloc. Can you talk to us about that? And can you actually also mention this coming as China has taken a big part of the auto industry?
Yeah, so that 15% tariff, it will not hurt as much as it sounds. Why? I think the two biggest producers of cars that are imported into the U.S. are BMW and Mercedes. Both of those cars, most of them, are made in the U.S. now. I think BMW makes in South Carolina. Mercedes produces, I think, in Georgia and Alabama. So I don't think that will hurt that much, those companies, since they produce here. What President Trump is hoping is a lot of the parts that the cars that are made here use are still made in Europe. And if that's the case, they'll be subject to the tariff. President Trump is hoping that the companies will say, look, it's much cheaper for them to move manufacturing facilities here in the U.S. That will allow them to sell their cars without having to raise the price. And on the U.S. side, that will create more jobs, and it'll be a net gain, definitely, for the American worker.
Okay, Michael, that's our time today. Really appreciate you giving us your time today. Thank you.
Always my pleasure.
And right now, law enforcement is holding a press conference on the shooting at Dallas ICE facility. Let's take a look at that.
Devices and locations associated with the sniper. FBI agents executed a search warrant at the sniper's residence yesterday, and there found a collection of notes. First, I want to point out that one of these notes or papers, the sniper explicitly states, yes, it was just me. That statement appears to be correct at this point in the investigation. Notably, these loose notes included a game plan of the attack and target areas at the facility. He called the ICE employees people showing up to collect a dirty paycheck. He wrote that he intended to maximize lethality against ICE personnel and to maximize property damage at the facility. He hoped to minimize any collateral damage or injury to the detainees and any other innocent people. It seems that he did not intend to kill the detainees or harm them. It's clear from these notes that he was targeting ICE agents and ICE personnel. The tragic irony for his evil plot here is that it was a detainee who was killed and 2 other detainees that were injured when he fired into the Sally Port. He also hoped his actions would give ICE agents real terror of being gunned down, and he did this to induce constant stress in their lives. He hoped his actions would terrorize ICE employees and interfere with their work, which he called human trafficking. And this, what he did, is the very definition of terrorism. Again, his notes reveal, yes, it was just me and my brain. And he said, good luck with the digital footprint. And of course, we take this to mean that he deleted evidence from his devices. His words were definitively anti-ICE. That said, we did not find evidence of membership in any specific group or entity, nor did he mention any specific government agency other than ICE. Among his papers, though, was a handwritten note in which, in crude words, he expressed his hatred for the federal government. Finally, I want to address the heroism of our federal agents yesterday. While under fire, ICE agents and ATF agents who were also present in the facility's Sally Port area worked together to remove detainees from the vans and get them to safety while the bullets were flying. These agents were heroic, clearly willing to lay down their lives to save the lives of the detainees in their custody. And that's an extremely important point to make at this point in time. I want to express my deepest appreciation for the bravery of these law enforcement officers yesterday and every single day that they go out there to keep us safe. I'll now turn it over to FBI Special Agent in charge of the Dallas Field Office, Joe Rothrock. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to start by thanking our acting United States Attorney, Nancy Larson, and her office for their support during this investigation. My name is Joe Rothrock, and I'm the Special Agent in charge of the FBI's...
And that was officials giving an update on the ICE facility shooting yesterday. So the person was talking about the motives here and potentially giving us a hint, because the notes apparently said that the shooter wanted to maximize injury on ICE agents. So specifically talking about ICE agents and talking about minimizing collateral damage on other people. So that means, according to the official, that it was not intended for the shooter to actually kill the detainees or the detainee that was shot yesterday, and 2 more injured. One is dead. And we're going to go back to the presser now. Take a listen.
And how to track ICE agents' locations. Jan also acknowledged the potential for other casualties. He knew with a high likelihood ICE detainees would be transported that morning in the exact location where he was facing from his perch on a nearby rooftop. Jan's attack did in fact result in the tragic death of 1 detainee and the injury to 2 other detainees. We have been able to confirm that Jan legally obtained an 8mm bolt-action rifle he used in the shooting in August of this year. Based on our investigation to date, we believe Jan acted alone, but I'll stress our investigation continues. This attack yet again underscores the dangers that law enforcement face daily. We continue to see an increased threats against law enforcement. This is the 2nd attack in recent months on ICE facilities here in North Texas. I do want to take this opportunity to thank our law enforcement partners, some of whom are here with us today. When Jan began firing, agents from both ICE and the ATF put themselves in the line of fire to move individuals off the transportation vehicles in an attempt to protect and rescue those that were injured. I want to thank them for their bravery. The Dallas Police Department and the Dallas County Sheriff's Office also quickly responded to the scene without any hesitation and ran towards danger. Ultimately, they located the shooter, who was deceased by an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. I want to thank them for their prompt response and dedication to protecting and serving their communities. I also want to thank our partners that have assisted in this investigation. The Fairview Police Department, as well as our partners in Oklahoma, to include Bryant County Sheriff's Department, Durant Police Department, and Choctaw Nation Light Horse Police, as well as our personnel from San Antonio and Oklahoma City within the FBI that assisted. The FBI has dedicated its entire breadth of resources to ensure this investigation is completed thoroughly. The FBI stands with our law enforcement partners, and today we express that the attacks against law enforcement officers will not be tolerated. While we believe Jan acted alone, we are still asking that anyone with information about Jan or his activities report that to the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at
Okay, so the official is saying if anyone has any tips, please call the FBI. It's 1-800-CALL-FBI. And it appears that from the current investigation, which, by the way, is still ongoing, the shooter said that he acted alone. It was all by himself. And he gave other notes as well, as such as saying good luck with the digital trail, perhaps indicating that he has deleted some information. Okay, we're going to move on for now. Next, former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been convicted for receiving Libyan campaign funds in 2007 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He denies wrongdoing, calling the ruling a persecution. NTD international correspondent David Revez reports from Paris.
A French court specialized in financial crimes has convicted former French President Nicolas Sarkozy for receiving illegal campaign funds from Libya in 2007. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with part of that sentence to be served immediately despite his appeal. This marks the first time a French president has been convicted. The court called his action a criminal conspiracy of an exceptional gravity, likely to undermine citizens' confidence in those who represent them. Sarkozy has denied the charges, calling the ruling a persecution.
I couldn't be accused of any personal enrichment. No illegal financing of my campaign. No personal enrichment.
The court found him guilty of criminal association in a 2005-2007 plot to obtain Libyan funds in exchange for diplomatic favors, but cleared him of other charges like illegal campaign financing and corruption. This trial followed more than 10 years of investigation and press revelations exposing a suspected corrupt pact between Gaddafi's Libya and Sarkozy's political circle.
I will comply with the summons of justice. If they absolutely want me to sleep in prison, I will sleep in prison, but with my head held high. I am innocent.
Despite the conviction, Sarkozy remains influential in French politics, meeting current leaders and leading support to right-wing National Rally Party. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
7 more U.S. universities have cut ties with the Chinese Communist Party following calls from the House Select Committee on the CCP. And a bipartisan group of lawmakers are pushing legislation to release wrongfully detained U.S. citizens and their family members from Chinese jails. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
7 U.S. universities have closed their joint ventures with the China Scholarship Council, a Chinese Communist Party-backed scholarship program. University of Notre Dame and Dartmouth College are among those who have cut ties. It comes after the House Committee on the Chinese Communist Party raised concerns that the partnership allowed the CCP to exploit U.S. institutions to transfer sensitive tech that's used to support China's military growth. Chairman of the Select Committee on the CCP commended the decisions, writing that the institutions are demonstrating real leadership and a commitment to safeguarding U.S. research and innovation. He hopes others will follow suit. In other news, a Republican and a Democrat are pushing a bill to release Americans wrongfully detained in China. Congressman Chris Smith says the CCP holds more Americans as prisoners than any other nation in the world. The congressman said it is well past time that the United States responds forcefully and fearlessly to rescue its citizens who have been held hostage by the CCP. His bill would direct the Secretary of State to create a plan to identify all cases of concern and use leverage available to release citizens in Chinese custody. It also aims to counter the CCP's tactic of suppressing free speech abroad by holding family members of American citizens as hostages. One example is the sister of Uyghur American activist Rushan Abbas. After she spoke out against the CCP's human rights abuses in Xinjiang, her sister was handed a 20-year prison sentence on terrorism-related charges. Smith said these deliberate assaults on the freedoms and livelihoods of American citizens and their families must end once and for all. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Starbucks is closing more stores and announcing a second round of layoffs at its headquarters in an effort to revive its struggling business. This morning, CEO Brian Niccol said the company will shut down hundreds of stores this month, roughly 1% of its locations. By the end of September, Starbucks will have 18,300 North American locations. That's down from more than 18,700 it had at the end of June. Starbucks also revealed an additional 900 corporate layoffs in addition to the roughly 1,000 previously announced in February. The company expects its restructuring efforts to cost $1 billion. The Trump administration is bracing for a government shutdown and has advised federal agencies to prepare a reduction in force of non-essential programs. Will Democrats stay the course and force a lapse in government funding? We come back with that.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Ganjian Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
There's cultures that have been lost, but this culture hasn't been. The artist is showing us our sense of who we are, where we came from. You look at his hat. His hat is knitted probably by a man because a man traditionally knitted the hats. That hat tells you the story of who this person is, what his place in the culture is, the animals around him. Everything's all contained in the messages in the hat. And the tool that he's carrying over his shoulder. This is a centuries-old tool that has been able to rework the mountains. Those traditions are invaluable, and if we don't honor those traditions, then we're rootless. The artist is showing us the value of maintaining our culture and respecting our culture.